Hello, the Internet, and welcome to Open Source Directions, hosted by Quansight, the webinar that brings you all of the news about the future of your
Hi,
favorite open source
listeners. I'm
projects.
Carol Willing.
My
I'm an
name
active
is
member
Anthony
of the Jupyter
Skopatz,
and
your host
Python
for Open Source
communities, and I'm
Direction.
very happy to have an
Co-hosting with me today
opportunity
is Carol.
to chat with three wonderful folks about Voila. And Sylvan, I'll start with you.
And I'm Jeremy Toulouse, and I'm a scientific software engineer at Quansight, and I'm based in Europe. And I've been working on open source projects such as Voilà and the debugger UI extension for Jupyter Lab.
Hello, my name is Maarten Brettels. So a scientist, and I was a big fan of and started creating IPyVolume. And basically after that, together with Sylvain, now I'm doing that full time and doing a lot of open source Quansight.
Excellent. Well, it's so great to meet you and have you back on in Sylvan's case. So before we get started and dive on into Voila, we have our famous tweet of the week section where each of our panelists here today is going to present a tweet that they've been
from
enjoying
Microsoft.
So
says,
Jeremy,
we are extremely excited to share you can now write .NET code in Jupyter notebooks. The good thing about it is that there's actually a binder link, so you can actually try it live on binder. Yeah, and it just works. So there are also examples with Plotly, which means that soon enough we will have Voilà dashboards in C#.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so there was a tweet this week by Arman Gillis, and not so much about the content. Let me read it. Just discovered and play with Vex.io. So I also wrote Vex, a data frame library. It's pretty mind-blowing, great work of Maarten Brettels and the team. We'll definitely follow. And this is kind of the opposite of what many people complain about, like open source, it's so harsh, etc. What I noticed that people are like so kind. Like almost half of the issues opened on IPyVolume or Voila or on Vex, people thank you for the library. And I'm not sure if this is something in the Python community or the data science community, but I don't. Sometimes people can be harsh, but most of the time they're really friendly and thankful.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and just following up on that, Brett Cannon is my tweet, and he said, thanks to the Python community for making itself such a pleasure for everyone to be a part of, that Python is now the #2 language on GitHub. Both this, basically take a look at the GitHub State of the Octaverse report, and that is actually where the Jupyter Notebook quote came from as well. So great job, all the folks that are on this webinar as well, because you've helped us do that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Carol. And for my tweet, our very own Saul Shannabrook tweets, I had such a good time at PyData New York City. Thank you, everyone who made this happen, especially at Urban Plans. It was a great group of people. So nice to see everyone. And so nice to see everyone I knew and make some new friends. See all of you again next year. My sentiments exactly, Saul. So with that, we're going to dive in and discuss, just do a brief introduction of Voila. So if you're not aware, Voila allows you to convert a Jupyter notebook into an interactive dashboard. It's got about 1,300 stars on GitHub. It's a very, very new project, so that's incredibly
so Sylvan, since I've been talking about Voila in every keynote that I've given recently,
a few questions,
maybe you could tell us a little bit why the project was started and what need it fills.
Okay, so before I answer that, please stop. This is really scary. This is all going too fast, and we are just trying to keep up with like the rate of adoption and everything. So, okay, so here's a 2-minute speech on Voila. So the idea is that people use Jupyter notebooks and Jupyter to improve the workflow, their workflows as researchers, educators, scientists, and from the exploratory phase of their work to the communication of the results. And the problem is that, the notebook really implements, the literate programming workflow where you follow the order of the code and you walk a user, along, your reasoning as you execute the code. And so that order is not always the order that you want for non-technical audience, because very often the very interesting stuff tends to be in the end of the notebook, right? So we want to revert that and put the interesting content at the beginning of the page. So another challenge with sharing notebooks is the security model. How can we offer the interactivity of a notebook making use of Jupyter widgets without allowing arbitrary code execution for the end user? So this is something that people have been asking for a long time. There was, they wanted to deploy applications developed in the Jupyter notebook as standalone web apps. An earlier project in that space that is retired now that I should mention here is the Jupyter dashboard project, which was contributed to the Jupyter ecosystem by a team at IBM in 2015, 2016, and that is now retired, unfortunately.
Excellent. That's a great intro. So, Jeremy, are there any alternative projects
the dashboard thing is quite active at the moment. So the first one we can mention is Panel. There was an episode about it actually a few weeks ago from the Anaconda folks. The difference compared to Voilà is that it's actually running on the Bokeh server, which is something different than the Jupyter server. And this integrates really well with Holo views and data shader. There is also Dash by Plotly, which is basically a Flask backend and React components as a front end. And it also integrates really well with the cloud solution that Plotly offers. And finally, there is also RShiny. So from RStudio, so RShiny has been there for many years and still pretty hard to beat because it's very good. But that's kind of our goal with Voila. So yeah, but it's mostly for our users. And so Voila, we're targeting more than one language.
Fantastic. So Martin, what technology are these tools built in, and Voila specifically?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because what Voila really tries to do is take all of the components of the Jupyter ecosystem and friction, and we try to remove that friction and try to improve as much the existing tools. So let me start at the back end, the server. It's a Tornado server. Basically, it's called Jupyter Server. Jupyter Server is, let me tell this story as if we are already living in the future. It will be the server that powers Jupyter Notebook, Jupyter Lab. So you think of it as, say, the whole Jupyter Notebook server, but without all the front-end stuff. So it only accepts a connection to a kernel, etc. So Voila uses that. So we just have a handler for a request. And the request, we basically forward it to mbconvert. So mbconvert is a command line util that takes a node and outputs an HTML file. So in the beginning, basically that was what Voila was doing. So converting to HTML and returning that to the client. We're pushing that a little bit. We're pushing a lot on these projects to move a particular direction, so it integrates well with Voila. But on the front end, similar to mbconvert, we have a like a Jinja template, and out comes like a pure HTML and JavaScript. So the simplest templates that we have, they mimic the Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebook output. But there are other solutions. So we have one template. I'll show some of that. That's using Vue or Vuetify. And there's a React version as well with the Material UI to give a more modern look and feel for people that really want to have something which they can heavily customize.
Excellent. So who started the Voila project?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, actually. And I had to go back to some files to see like how did this start. And let me see if I can share my screen, because this was actually the start of the of this. So let me see. The image open, yeah. So share.
It's relatively new though, right?
Yes.
There's your screen.
So you see now that it's in a browser, that it says executing notebook client bottle. So this is a notebook that displayed a IPy volume, of course, widget. And this was really like a really bad hack that I did, because I didn't know the whole Jupyter ecosystem. But this was my like really early prototype, and I shared this on GitHub. And a few reactions, but not much. But 2 weeks later, Pascal Bugnon wrote IPy widget server. And actually, so this was the inspiration for him to build this. And I'm saying this because sometimes people like you share something and you don't get much reaction. And I had the same, but it can have some impact sometimes. And he wrote this, I think, if I look at the dates, in 3 weeks. That was IPy widget server. Which was really well written, really a good job by Pascal picking this idea up, and he knew the ecosystem much better. And then I think in like a year ago, Sylvain had a better idea how to do it with the kernels, because IPy widget server was IPy, it was Python only. And Sylvain, of course, being an expert in the whole Jupyter ecosystem, he said, no, this is not the way to go, it should be this. But this was based on the IPy widget server. But now
Thanks,
being
Martin,
language
for
agnostic.
how it started.
And,
so Sylvain, how is it
that was
being
a year
maintained
ago.
today?
So that is a changing thing at the moment. So I'm going to try to explain how this is changing. So Voila was started like about a year ago as a Quansight project. And if you look at the commits, and you would still see that most of the bigger contributions are by Quansight developers like Jeremy, who is on the call, Martin Renou, and myself. But if you do a filter by the past couple of months, you see that there is a growing number of contributors from other companies and other institutions who contribute to the code from build upon Voila. So Voila core has something like 28 contributors, like individual contributors, but there are lots of other contributors who build the third-party templates. We'll get to what templates are in Voila later, or the gallery project, which is a server showing a gallery of Voila dashboards in a single page. So yeah, now we're really trying to make it, I would say, a multi-stakeholder project.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that'll really help, I believe, survivability and long-term maintainability of the project. So where are the users and contributors
for the users
coming from? Is it sort of anyone in the
many come
Jupyter
from the
ecosystem?
industry, for example, as a data scientist who are familiar with Jupyter notebooks for their analysis work. And they, for example, they want to share results internally with a portal or something like this. So they can use Voila to create a dashboard. But we also have, of course, users in more like research, for example, scientists who want to publish their results as a dashboard. So it's pretty varied. And also for educational purposes, and teaching concepts without necessarily showing the code, but just graphs and interactions.
That's great. I can imagine. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I imagine like the journalists and stuff are also really interested in using it.
Yeah, it's like I think there's a special name for this, like data-driven journalism, where there is more and more, even articles online that are made from data and visualizations. Yeah.
That's great.
And for the contributors, but now that Voilà has been accepted as a Jupyter project, so we get a lot of contributors from the wider Jupyter community, which is great because there's a lot of knowledge to share.
Yeah.
But we also have contributors from the users, and many people come from with the documentation, examples and fixes, and also add their use cases to the gallery. So that's quite great to see, like this very varied set of contributors.
That's great. So one last question before we get to the really cool demos. Sylvan, is the project participating in any diversity and inclusion efforts?
So in terms of inclusion, I would say, or like trying to be more open to external contributions, we're, as I said earlier, we're really trying to make Voilà a more multi-stakeholder thing. So the first thing was to move to the Jupyter governance. So that includes the code of conduct and like the rest of the sort of decision-making process for the project. We also organized a community workshop on dashboarding in June that was a lot about Voilà. So which included a public meetup. Actually, we don't put ourselves like as a competition to even Dash or Panel. We really would like to get some synergies there. And actually, two speakers for the meetup were the authors of Panel and like a core contributor of Dash. So which were like competing technologies. And so now we have a public team Compass page, which includes a public calendar for the public video meetings of the Voilà team, and so that we can have I would say, a more transparent decision-making process for anyone who wants to engage with us.
Fantastic.
Excellent. That's awesome. So at this point, we get to dive into the fun and see some of these amazing dashboards and demos that you've all put together. So I don't know who's. It looks like Sylvan. Maybe you're going to demonstrate the first one
I'm
here.
very unprepared, and I run
maybe Jeremy.
Voilà, maybe 5 minutes before this call, which is like quite the opposite to the last one I gave about which is quite the opposite from the last one I gave about extensor. So let's see if it works, right? So please bear with me here. So I'm going to share my screen. So how do you do that?
If you hover over there you go.
All right, so
always faster to create a new environment.
In a terminal, right? And in that terminal, I have a number of Jupyter notebooks. So for example, I have a Jupyter notebook that includes a BQ plot chart. So let me open this as a notebook, right? So I have a markdown cell that says so easy, voila. And then, you know, like a code cell in a Python code cell that produces an interactive, you know, plot using BQplot, you know, this 2D plotting library that we all know and love. So, okay, this is a notebook, and well, there is a deep truth hidden somewhere on this chart. Actually, this one is completely randomly generated, but I would like to share this on my blog, or like, you know, make this a standalone application, right? Mm-hmm. So from the easiest way to do this from a user perspective is simply to open the terminal and type Voila, and then the name of the notebook. So that's so far that's pretty easy, and this is what you get. You get the very same chart rendered in the Jupyter notebook, and the same code cell, right? So you may notice that this is not quite the same thing as the notebook, meaning that we don't see the code cells, we don't have any of the rest of the notebook UI, and if you actually inspect the HTML, you will see that it's not just that we hide these parts of the page. It's really like a completely new page that doesn't have any of the notebook logic, that renders the markdown and notebook outputs, right?
Oh, interesting. So it's just that it's not there, and you're running some separate server. And could you stay on this terminal a while? So, because I think the refresh was a little slow. Oh, back to the terminal.
I type Voila BQ plot.
Just so that you see that Voila BQ plot.
But if I do want to share the source as read-only, I can still pass another command line option, which would be strip sources equal false. And I'll get something that looks a bit more like a notebook, except that this content here is not a code mirror cell that you can edit. It's really static HTML, right? And you can pass some more options at the command line, like for example, deciding for a theme, dark theme.
Yeah.
So since we use the same DOM structure as Jupyter Lab, we can actually apply any Jupyter Lab to Voila dashboards. So, and this is going to apply to code cells, widgets, or any other part of the API, of the UI.
That's just fantastic. And just for clarification, the graph really does cover, the plot covers all the data that you originally had, correct? Like if you had a large data set. Well, if you had a large data set, it's not going to just render part of it for you. It's going to render the whole data set.
It's going to do whatever the notebook was doing.
Okay. Cool.
And so to like sort of explain how this works a bit more. So when you do Voila a notebook, so I'm going to share my screen here again.
But yeah, I think this is an important distinction, Carol, right? The data isn't getting embedded into the notebook, like all the data. So you could be able
to visualize the execution model
interactively really large data sets.
Voila. So basically, it's really important to us that you don't get, that you produce like secure web applications, and the front end doesn't get to decide what code is executed by the kernel, right? So when you do Voila notebook.ipynb, what you get is a new Tornado application. And when you connect to that Tornado application with a GET request, what the backend does is to open the notebook, launch the associated kernel, run all the notebook cells, and populate the cell outputs. And as it does it, it sends partial HTTP responses for the frontend to render these outputs. In the end, when it's finished rendering, the HTML actually includes some JavaScript that initiates the connection to the Jupyter kernel that's still alive. And then through the WebSocket connection, we allow all the kernel messages that correspond to widget interactions. So COM messages, COM info request, and also obviously the shutdown request, which is sent when you close the tab.
Nice.
So it is really taking the existing pieces of the Jupyter ecosystem. Did you see my screen as I was showing it? Okay.
Yeah.
This is really taking like existing pieces of Jupyter, meaning the server, the widgets, the rich metadata rendering, the notebook format, NB convert, and the kernels together, but we reassemble it into a different application from the notebook or Jupyter Lab. We even use some of the Jupyter Lab front-end components to produce that application. So it's really using everything. And if you look at the Voila code base itself, it's actually fairly small. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And go ahead.
Excellent. So Oh yeah, so do we have some of these Jupyter Lab interactions
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Available to see?
Yes, they will later. Yeah.
Oh, just are there any demos involving Jupyter?
So
Lab
it's not
here
my part. It's Jeremy's going to show that, I think.
No, but it's a good question because there's also ongoing discussions about reusing more and more from Jupyter Lab. So Jupyter Lab is split into maybe 70 different packages, which is great for modularity. That means we can build our own front end. And there is actually, ongoing work and discussions about making a template based on those of those packages. But since we're speaking about Jupyter Lab, I can show you now something that is an extension for Jupyter Lab. So let's say open this notebook. So this is a notebook that starts the same as the one Sylvain demoed. So it says so easy Voilà, but just shows that we can create some widgets, and we have this icon here that we click on it and we get a preview of the Voilà dashboard that is running on the side. So that means that now I can also start using it here. And there is also support for live reloading. So let's say I want to increase the maximum value of the slider. I can put it to 100, press save, and it's going to re-render the preview. And now I can bring it to 100 if I want. That's so the idea, beautiful. The idea is to be able to iterate quickly on the notebook and see the end result as a dashboard. And the reason why we call it preview is because it's really what will be shown when we use Voila. So under the hood is using the notebook server extension. So it adds an endpoint to the notebook server, so we can actually hit the Voila handler endpoint. And I can show you another example, still using this extension. So this one is coming from Benoit Bovy, and it's a simulation. So I will show you what it looks like. So of course we can run it in a notebook here, and it's a lot of code. Let me see. Yeah, it's right here. So we have it at the very bottom. But what we can do is we can also show the preview at the same time and interact with it. So maybe I can decrease the zoom. Yeah. So this. Yeah, exactly. And to show you that
the advantage here is that it really gets right to exactly
we
what
still
you want
get the
to
normal
show.
theme because it's still using the default theme, which is light. What we plan to do is to also add some controls here, so we can change different parameters. For example, controlling the theme, the template, or even showing or not the source, so we get more features in the preview.
I just loved it. For education, that's like amazing, because you could make stuff for, like high school students, and then they could just manipulate it with the sliders and not have to worry about the code.
Yeah, exactly. So just to show you, one more example. So let's say I edit this this title here. So instead of particles parameter, I just pass parameter instead. And it's reloading, it's executing the whole notebook, and then we have the change here. All right, and this example is also, again, like Sylvain mentioned before, it's all based on the IPyWidget ecosystem. So the visualization is actually made with IPyCanvas, which is an interactive canvas for Jupyter. So it's using the HTML5 canvas that was created by Martin Renou. And so again, something that is quite nice when we want to just, for example, for educational purposes, one more time. Okay, so since I have the screen at the moment, I can also show briefly the gallery. So if you go to voilagallery.org, there is a gallery of examples, and the examples come from mostly from the community of users. And they can add their example by going to this repo and opening a pull request. There is details here on how to add an example. And what happens, for example, when we click on one of the cards, it's going to start an isolated environment for that Voilà dashboard. And then you can start interacting with the widgets. So this one is a machine learning model evaluation. So it's basically to play around with parameters and see how the machine learning models change. Yeah, it's all made using Matplotlib. Yeah.
It's really impressive. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Are there other demos here that we want to show off? Do you have anything, Martin?
Yeah. So what you've seen till now is actually we haven't shown templates, but most of the templates are like notebook oriented. So if you have the cells in particular order, they will output them in particular order. Let me share my screen and show you a notebook.
Like the back of.
So by now everybody knows bqplot, right? So let's make a so I take a histogram called IPyFutify. And I should mention this is work done by Mario Buikhuizen in collaboration with Quansight and Olivier Baudier from Société Générale. He should be present in the room. And this is a library, and although you won't see it here, let me make some more widgets, so a line chart, some interaction, and this really nice widget that I really like, this drop down with nice styling. So I have this notebook, but I would say it doesn't make sense to show these in in a linear way. So let me just run it with Voila to show you what you get. So okay. I get what I want, but I mean, it doesn't look like really pretty, right? It's and it's linear. So what we've done is created a new template, and that's a template called Futify default. So there's a base one. With this template, you can actually say which widget goes where on the page. Let me just show it. So this is the same notebook, but now with a different template. So now you can lay them out. You can have a navigation drawer on the left. And this is also responsive. So if I make it smaller, then
that's excellent.
And the and for instance, this is probably the size of your. We built on top of this Futify library, which is a component library written for Vue. All of these interactions, they all work on tablets. Yeah. So, yeah. And try. And there's and in the doc.
Right.
Shelf, so you can easily repeat this. And you want to have this on your blog, then you would need to write your blog in Voila, which doesn't make sense. So maybe you have your blogging system and you can put in some snippets of HTML, and you want to embed one of these widgets in it. And that's this library called Voila Embed. It was released yesterday, actually. And let me. And so this is a regular HTML page, and what it's now doing, it's running this notebook that is running on Heroku. And once it's done, it will show it in here. And because this is a live demo, this doesn't work.
It might just be slow.
Let me see. Or is it just slow? It could also just be slow.
Yesterday, so.
Yeah. Let me try a refresh. Yeah, but it should be robust. Yeah. So this is a regular web page that is connected to a Jupyter kernel, and the widgets are embedded on, well, wherever you want it to be on the page. So I think this is really important if you have already an existing server, etc., to first integrate this into the existing
clarify one
HTML
thing.
pages.
The layout.
So yeah, we're pretty excited about this.
Is that done in the template?
Yeah. Yeah, so the idea is that first people start writing a notebook and they just use Voila and they get some output and they can play with it. And maybe if some notebook is really promising, they could work with a front-end developer that could do more of the template and lay that out. And they can work together.
Yeah, this is all extremely impressive, the work that you've all been able to put together in the past year. So at this point, I think we should talk about the work going forward, though. What is on the roadmap for the future of Voila, and where are things going, and what can we expect?
Can I squeeze in something about the previous question by Carol about the templates?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know if, Carol, you may be familiar with the Jupyter Dashboards project that was done by IBM, where layout was encoded in the notebook metadata, and the dashboards were able to consume that layout. And so we really want to be compatible with that, at least with one of the possible templates. And no, you have, I just wanted to show you a preview of that before we actually publish it. So it's really like it's being announced here, but there is this called Voilà Group, and which has been further developed by Bartosz Telenchuk, and we have this blog post coming out on the Jupyter blog probably in the next couple of days, where you can create, ad hoc layouts, and so this implementation actually can consume the same spec for the layout as the legacy dashboards from IBM. So all of the things that worked with the Jupyter Dashboards project from that is now retired should be usable from Voila thanks to that new template that we're releasing.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to use that in my next keynote.
All right.
And let me add to this, I always say, any that can be done with the template. So all of these things that we showed, like the embedding, so that's something that people
so then it's amazing. Thank you for sharing it.
Is that this is all language agnostic, so Voila works with any Jupyter kernel, and this is an example here. I'll show the code for the purpose of showing that it's not Python, of a dashboard built with Voila and the C++ kernel. So this dashboard here that includes some interactive maps actually works without any sort of Python involved. So
fantastic.
I'm so happy you all are so dedicated to learning JavaScript to a level where I will never learn it. This is all incredible. So with that, I think we really have to move on to our roadmap discussion. So where is Voila going? So Ron, you want to take the first stab at that?
Yeah. Did I mute myself, or can you still?
No, we can hear you. We can.
So I think one of the biggest items for us right now is going to be to move to a Jupyter Lab-based template for the front end that uses the Jupyter Lab build system. And the reason is that there has been a lot of work done by the community for custom MIME renders for Jupyter Lab that don't currently work in Voila, and we want to be compatible with all of that. Also, we want to have a single bundle for the front end, like for performance reasons. And finally, some other plotting libraries like Bokeh at the moment don't work in Voila, and we really want them to work. We would like ideally anything that works in the notebook or Jupyter Lab to work. And the thing is, for the classic notebook, Bokeh does not really use the classic notebook extension system, while they actually are doing like the sort of more standard thing on Jupyter Lab. So adapting the Jupyter Lab block system is like one of the biggest work items for the next few months, I would say, for us. Another big thing is, like I would say, work on some of the underlying components, like the Jupyter server, and this has been pretty much done by Zach Saylor, who's been working super hard on the Jupyter server to make Voila one of the, sort of, and put Voila on an equal footing with Notebook and Jupyter Lab as a new front end to the Jupyter server.
Yeah, makes sense. Jeremy, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so we often get a lot of questions about deployment and how we can actually deploy those Voila dashboards. And one thing we're going to work on more in the future is integration with Jupyter Hub. So at the moment, we can use the notebook server endpoint, like I mentioned before. This is basically what we do when we show examples running on mybinder.org. But ideally, we would be able to run the Voila standalone app also on Jupyter Hub, for example, as a name server.
Cool.
Yeah. Or another thing is how to better deploy single instances and have multiple users accessing the same instance. Do we start a kernel every time? Do we share kernels? This is like still an open question, but we want to work on that and also see the use cases, especially when the number of users becomes a bit big. And another aspect is maybe adding pools of kernels. Could be something to explore.
Yeah, I could say like maybe some of the federated stuff and other things also being interesting.
But I think Martin has more details maybe on like forking kernels and such things.
Yeah, so that's actually something I can talk about. Is an idea I have for a long time is the ability to fork a kernel for multiple reasons. And one is people complain always about like linearity in notebooks. So with forking kernels, you could like fork the Voila. It could be that you run the whole kernel, you run the notebook, and you keep a copy. So you fork it, and each new client gets a fork, and then you should be able to take a notebook, run it overnight. It may take 6 hours to run. And then in the morning, everybody gets his private copy of that notebook that ran some big simulation. So regarding performance, now that Python 2 is almost gone, we can focus on doing things asynchronously with async.io. We're having some performance issues together with the MB Convert, Jupyter Client, and Voila, Tornado together. And if we move that to async.io, life will be much simpler. And another thing about performance is like I was trying to test everything to the limit, like IPyKernel, but there's also another Python kernel, Zeus Python, by I don't know who wrote this. Somebody knows? Written by Quansight. And actually, that starts up much faster. So so Zeus Python is interesting on its own, the Zeus project, but this is also a really powerful way of starting a kernel faster. And something else regarding templates. So as we said, we try to push improvements into the existing Jupyter tools, And for Voila, we needed a good template system, but we were using MB Convert. So what we tried to do is push these IDs for how templates work to MB Convert. And if all my wishes come true, and I think they will, you should be able to write one template and be able to generate a static HTML version or a Voila web page from the same template. So you can imagine having a corporate logo somewhere, or interactive Voila dashboards with the same template. So
excellent.
I hope to see
well,
this.
So I would just like to say that these are all places where the Voila project is looking for contributions, either in terms of code, or if you have deeper pockets in terms of funding. And these are all locations where the project's already moving, and it would be great to help out. So with that, it's now time for our Q&A section. So we have a couple of questions that came in, and a couple of questions that were actually answered even in the roadmap section. So we won't ask those, but for our first question, Jose asks, what's the difference between Voila, Panel, and Plotly Dash? So I think this is, the answer is briefly as you possibly can.
I want to say that mostly the integration with Jupyter, like the main difference between all of the different solutions. So yeah, exactly.
Which means language agnostic.
Yeah, we don't have to go into the details, but Voila still sticks to the Jupyter protocol, and for example, Plotly Dash is usually deployed as a standalone application, so a standalone Python server using its own front end. And for Panel, it's all about running on the Bokeh server. So I would say mostly that's the main difference between all of the different projects.
Notebook format. So the notebook is the main entry point for any dashboard. So any notebook that's somewhere in GitHub is potentially a Voila dashboard if you put a bit of effort into it.
And for the people that still are not convinced of using, that's a great way to get you into the
Well,
Jupyter.
okay. We've got also another great question from Jose Ampinko, who's one of the probably longest running supporters of IPython and Jupyter, and has even published books using it. But he asked, can you deploy Voila behind a load balancer, and does the security model allow for that?
Yeah, so I think
yeah.
No, it's a nice question, because I actually had that conversation in real life with someone already, and so basically, yes, we can start multiple instances of Voila and have a load balancer, but all of the logic will be on the load balancer side to be able to, in the end, be able to redirect requests to the proper where the kernels are. So that would be one model. Another thing that would be interesting to explore in the future is to use something like the enterprise gateway. So instead of having notebook servers, or in our case, the Voila server, we will have kernels on different machines or in different pods, for example, in Kubernetes. In that case, the load balancer could be the Kubernetes load balancer. So still a few things to explore, but at the moment, should be possible. But yeah.
Excellent. Well,
nice, great question.
So for our presumably last question here, Philip asks, I appreciate the discussion about supporting multiple users. I'm testing Voila on a Cloud Foundry build pack. I see your gallery uses Jupyter Hub. Should I consider the Hub option to support 20 plus users, and any issues I should watch out for?
Yeah, so I can also answer this one. So for the gallery, there is actually a proposal to use Binder Hub as a backend. So that means at the moment it's using Jupyter, the Litlust Jupyter Hub, which is one distribution of Jupyter Hub. But there is another distribution which is called 0 to Jupyter Hub with Kubernetes. And this one is basically doing a deployment of Jupyter Hub on Kubernetes. And the idea with the gallery and this proposal is to use mybinder.org to redirect items in the gallery to binders. So that could be one option. So let's say we want to have scale happening on a cluster, on a Kubernetes cluster. Then our Voila items in the gallery or on our internal dashboard would just be pointers to those binders.
That's fantastic. That's
Excellent.
great.
Well, it is now time for our world-famous rant section, where we each get 15 seconds to rant or rave about whatever topic we want. Martin, it is your soapbox.
So I really don't like that GitHub issues are called issues because people are afraid to open issues because they're afraid it looks bad because there are many issues. That means the library is bad or something. Well, actually, I love issues. Like the more the better. The name is bad.
Jeremy?
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about issues because mine is also about issues. And basically on GitHub, when you start opening a new issue, there is this list of suggestions. And I always click on one, even when I know there is nothing that is there already. And it just adds one redirection step, which can be a bit annoying sometimes.
It's true. Maybe I'll go next, or Sylvan, do you want to go?
To supplement yours and add some more detail.
Oh, fine. All right. Let's. Mine is actually daylight savings time, and both from a coding standpoint, and also because now the sun sets at 4:52 p.m. in San Diego, which is quite sad. Now, Sylvan, continue.
Yeah, I don't know why in the world do Europe and the US change, their, daylight saving time with a 2 weeks difference. I mean, it's the worst thing to actually schedule any sort of meeting or have any sort of coordination across the authentication. Like we have these 2 weeks.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
Google
that's true.
Makes mistakes. So it's really
I'm with you on that one, Sylvan.
A lot of productivity. I'm okay with daylight saving time, but I mean, at least we should all switch at the same time in the world.
Such jet setters here. Well, for my rant, I would just like to say that Peter Wang has too many amazing ideas. And that's all the time that we have for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Twitter at Quansight AI. If you are interested in funding open source projects, including Voila, you can find all of the project roadmaps at quansight.com/projects. Sylvan, Jeremy, Martin, where can folks find you and Voila?
Voila dashboards.github.io. It's the Team Compass.
Team Compass, that's great. Well, if you like the cut of the standard jib, join us again next episode when we'll address standard lib. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, folks.